Welcome everyone to Tofu Tech Talk. I am missing Nerduino. I have him. I've captured him. There we go. Welcome to Tofu Tech Talk. This is a little podcast that I do on Twitch where I invite Twitch streamers with STEM backgrounds, and I have such an exciting guest today. I'm so glad that Tofu Tech Talk is back after a huge hiatus, all on me. And I'm so honored Nerduino here is going to be a guest, and I'm going to let him introduce himself to the fullest extent. Please do so, Nerduino.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you. Sorry. I have a frog in my throat. So I'm Nerduino, or Ian, whichever you prefer. I am a former professional astronomer, and I worked at NASA for about 10 years at the Jet Propulsion Lab. Now streaming STEM content. I stream on Twitch 3 days a week and make YouTube content. I make a daily YouTube video that I just managed to squeak out before we sat down.
Content creation never stops.
Some days I get it out nice and early, and other days it's a struggle. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. So my undergrad is in engineering. I went to the University of Cambridge and studied engineering and business, actually. And then I had a gap, and we can talk about all that stuff. But yeah, I had a gap and went back to get my PhD, and it's been quite a journey.
No, you have such a fruitful history. Not implying you're old before before that comment comes off.
I mean,
badly.
also,
but no, you've such a varied background. And before I go into the depths of that, I actually have a personal question that I'm really interested in asking. My question is, could you explain to me what the difference is between astronomy and astrophysics?
Oh, so that's a really good question, which doesn't really have a clearly defined answer. So astronomy. So like at the University of Illinois, where I got my PhD, there is an astronomy department, which is a separate, has its own head, has its own staff, has its own faculty, and studies typically maybe more like observational astronomy, but not necessarily. But a lot of the professors in the astronomy department have joint appointments in the physics department.
Okay.
And so the people in the physics department might be more things like general relativity and I was going to say particle physics, but that's kind of a joint thing. So it's a very blurred line.
It's very
Some
similar,
universities
yeah?
don't.
It can be.
Yeah, some universities don't even have an astronomy department. It's all within physics. And it just depends, I think, on funding as well. So, but for example, my PhD advisor had a joint appointment. He was a physics professor and an astronomy professor. So yeah, it's very unclear.
There's a line that's being crossed over the whole time.
Yeah, and I mean, typically, I would say astronomy departments are smaller. Usually, the physics department is pretty big and has lots of funding. And I mean, we were in a tiny little building on the corner, and the physics department was like the rest of the block,
Okay. I was going to say physics is usually small in science as it is already. So even being smaller even than physics is always like, oh, that's tough gig.
Yeah, that's true. Well, at the University of Illinois, they have a big material science, an engineering program, and again, there's overlap there as well, So it's just like, I don't know. It's a.
What was your PhD in?
So my PhD is in it's in astronomy. So I was in the astronomy department. I have an astronomy PhD, and it was so I studied the cosmic microwave background, which is the relic radiation left over from the Big Bang.
Class.
Yeah. So and specifically that's like the general thing, and then you drill down into this tiny little, as you know, subjects there's like 10 people who are interested. But we studied foreground removal. So when you measure the CMB, you're doing it from inside the galaxy, right? You're looking out through the galaxy, and so there's a bunch of foregrounds that you pick up on the way, and removing those foregrounds from the CMB data and trying to recover the CMB data, particularly where the galaxy has contaminated it, there's a whole cottage industry in the cosmology world dealing with that. And so my PhD was using a new method, or developing a new method for using Bayesian statistics to remove those. And
Okay. Was there any fruitful discovery in your research, or was it?
yeah, it was good actually. My thesis. So most people's thesis, you have to publish it, right? It has to be
Yeah,
published research. So usually the university publishes it, and that's the last you hear of it. But actually, yeah, my thesis has a few citations.
that's
So
pretty
yeah,
impressive.
yeah. Just because of the method and what we were working on the Planck data at the time. I worked on a few different experiments. I worked on the BEAST. There's an experiment called BEAST. It's the background emission anisotropy scanning telescope that was based out here in California on the ground. And then I worked on Planck, which was the ESA mission
Mm,
to measure the cosmic microwave background in sort of the 2010s. Um,
okay.
and that was kind of the thread that connected certainly my early academic and scientific career.
So after your doctorate, you defended it, and did you immediately jump to working with NASA afterwards, or what was your kind of career
Yeah.
journey?
So yeah. Well, so it was interesting. So I had actually had a gap. I when I graduated from Cambridge, I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Sounds
So I
familiar.
yeah, right. I mean, and I so I went and worked in the city because that's what everybody does when they don't know what they want to do, right?
Fair, fair.
So I went. So I worked for an investment bank for a few years. I ended up living in Japan, and then
Oh.
um, got really interested in astronomy while I was living in Japan. And I was like, oh, this is, I kind of got sucked in by the cool pictures and took some courses, and then ended up transferring to the University of Illinois. And then that was rough. That was rough because I hadn't done physics. I mean, I had gaps in my physics knowledge because my background was engineering. So there were big gaps in like quantum mechanics and various other things that I needed to fill. But
Mm.
when you go, I don't. I'm assuming it's the same in Europe, but you have to take qualifying exams. They don't just let you. They don't just let you kind of rock up and and jump straight in and get your PhD. You have to take these qualifying exams. So there was a physics qual and a astronomy qual, and you got to take them once when you arrived, like the first week that you got there, and then you got two more chances. And if you didn't pass them on the third attempt, then you have to go find something else to do with your life. Um,
Interesting. Okay. You were
and I
saying that
find
I never passed any exams, so I hope that's not a legal thing that they missed out on. Anyways, moving on.
hey man, once you got the piece of paper, that's it.
Exactly. I'm running now.
Yeah, yeah. You just don't give it back, and it's fine.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that was pretty rough because I think I got the physics qual the first year. I want to say I can't remember if it was 4% or 7% on the physics qual.
Okay.
So they were a little horrified by that. Uh, I passed the next year; it was all fine. I took the courses I needed, kind of got back into it, studied really hard, and got back up to speed. So anyway, then I went through a couple of different areas of research because I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. I did
Mhm.
some research on white dwarfs to start with.
Oh,
Uh,
class.
there was some thought, this would have been like back in 2000. There was some thought that maybe white dwarfs um, were some of the missing the dark matter,
I
and so
remember some
yeah,
dated books actually saying that. That's actually so were you part of that research?
yeah. So I published a couple of papers on that. We were using X-ray data. We're using GROSAT data. So we're doing like archival searches of data to find these white dwarfs. And then we were going out and looking for optical counterparts using a telescope. We actually got to go out to this telescope in Southern California and go look and see if we could see optical counterparts to these white dwarfs. And yeah, it was good. It was a fun piece. It was some fun research.
That is
But
actually so cool. And just to educate us, if you're familiar with what is the case with white dwarfs now, what are they?
um, so so the bottom line of the research was that white dwarfs are not. There's not enough. Um, there isn't enough mass to make up a significant fraction
Oh, the dark matter.
of the dark matter. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean they're just so a white dwarf is just a remnant of a star. The core of
Mm.
a star basically that's cooling. And they can have quite a bit of mass. They can be quite dense, and you so that the thought, and they're not very bright. And so the thought was, well, if there's a population of these stars that you can't see that are out there, maybe that could be some fraction of, since we don't understand, like, some massive fraction of, you know, of 22% of of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
regular matter in the universe. The thought was maybe this would, it didn't pan out, but it was good. It was, it was interesting.
No, that is so. Oh no, this is so cool. This is a lot cooler than I expected. Usually, listen, I can
Oh,
say
thank you, thank you. That's
spout
good, good.
my research and my PhD. It's nowhere nearly as interesting already as what you're saying, Nerduino, or Ian, if it's all right to call you.
Sure.
We're accumulating loads of questions already. This I expected this. Okay, so just giving you a heads up, because we're interviewing and we're just chatting casually. There is like a lot of backlog, so sometimes I'll ask a
Okay,
question and it
sure.
might have been on a topic that we talked about 10 minutes ago. So the first one's a meme. John, I'm skipping it. Is the University of Illinois Materials Science Department working on something we can build a space elevator out of? You were here the other day when we were talking about space elevators, the
I
possible
was,
physics.
I was.
Is Illinois
I don't.
working on anything?
So I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know that they have an incredible material science department, and if anybody is working on it, I would imagine they would be. Yeah, it's one of the
Ooh,
things that they're most well known for. I would say is material science. University of Illinois.
nice. What?
Uh,
Oh,
yeah.
if you had
No,
any
go ahead.
more. What is your take on the crisis in cosmology? Which measurement is wrong? Bog asks.
I'm not. I'm like in the. I don't really think there's a crisis in cosmology camp. I
Ooh.
think there's a. I think there's a. There are some issues with some of the measurements. So, and it seems as though that's starting to play out. Right. There's been some recent papers where people have done made measurements in different ways and come up. We're getting the same value for the Hubble constant, or at least within the error bars. So,
Mm.
my suspicion is that the we have this running joke. It's like a meme on my channel. Like, this is cosmology in crisis, and everybody wants me to keep making YouTube videos that just use that clickbait title. But
That's a good clickbait.
yeah. So personally, I suspect that what will end up happening is that some of the observations will be um, redone, or we'll find small systematic errors, and we'll end up with all the answers agree. I don't think there's a huge crisis. There's definitely some interesting tensions for sure, for sure. I'm not denying that, but
Mm.
I don't see the crisis.
Is it so, just to pry a bit personally on this, not personally to you, but in this department or this area, is it kind of like cliques in cosmology, that there's one group of researchers that believe A and are pushing everything to make A possible, and another group believing in B? And is that kind of the situation that's happening because of all the contradiction publication that's happening at the
I don't. So yeah, I mean, right? The astrophysicists and astronomers are humans, so they
moment?
do tend to form tribes.
Yeah.
But and there are people who maybe have preconceived. Of course, as scientists, right, we try not to decide what the answer is before we make the
Of
measurements.
course.
But there's definitely some. I don't think it's. There are definitely some camps of people who are like, well, I think we think this and we have this data,
Yeah.
and other people who are like, well, yeah, but your data's or we have this, and so
Mm.
there are definitely groups of people who think they're right based on the data, but I think that mm, all the reasonable people would be willing to change them. Like, if you came up with some new measurement and it agreed and everybody was like, okay, then people would just move on. It's not like
Okay.
that you get the odd fringe person, but for the most part, people are just interested in kind of figuring out what's actually going on.
Most people are
Yeah.
excited about getting the science right and getting it out, and then I suppose in the sense that it tends to be the loudest person tends to be not the you know
Well, yeah, and also, like, if you're if you're applying for funding,
you have
you
to
know,
reach for the
this
moon.
this this problems are kind of been solved. Maybe we're wrong. Isn't probably gonna,
Yeah, yeah. Don't
yeah.
talk to me about application for funding. Ooh.
So
uh,
there's definitely some of that, and also, in like more of the popular media, like the social media and stuff. Of course, then it's
yeah.
just for clicks, whatever.
Were the citations in commercial publishing in other writings thesis? My own background before esports. Whoa, sorry, let me read that again. My own background writing about esports before it became streamlined. However, many of my published notes often not contacted. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to read this whole paragraph, but it actually doesn't make sense to me. I apologize, Crimson. I will copy and paste it and send it directly to Nerduino. Is that all right? I just don't understand the question. Apologies on my part. Sorry, Spooky has another question here. Is Nerduino involved with the hate crime committed to Pluto? Hashtag justice for Pluto.
Uh, I'm on Pluto's side. Yeah,
Wait, what is Pluto's side though?
it's a planet. I mean, clearly it's a planet. It was a planet when I was growing up. It was good enough for me.
I see. Oh,
Um,
you made a lot of people excited. Some people are delighted in the chat at the moment hearing this.
I know we actually don't have we have a few Pluto haters in my chat, but for the most part, people are pro Pluto.
Pro Pluto. Glad to hear.
But no, I understand. I mean, it was one of those things, and I don't know. There are some other quite large bodies out there that we've discovered as well. So Pluto's a one of them. Oh yeah. So yeah.
Where's the dark matter if not in white dwarfs? So you did your research in a different area, but are you up to date with a lot of the dark matter talk these days?
um. So maybe black holes, but
Oh.
it's not clear. We still. I mean, it's kind of. In some ways, I was about to say it's shocking that we don't know, but I guess it isn't that shocking because we really haven't been doing this
For very
for all
long.
that long,
Mm.
So, um, but yeah, there's some thought that there are black holes, like solar mass black holes, maybe. That I don't know about that myself, but that's some of the research I've read. I am not, but we don't know. I mean, is the bottom line. We haven't come up with decent with uh with experimentally verifiable candidates.
Mm.
So we got lots of ideas, but we haven't managed to detect any of them. And it's hard. Like the things that I mean, by definition, right? It's dark. It's hard to see.
Mm.
We A lot of what you're trying to do is infer the presence of the mass from like galactic rotation curves, for example,
Yes.
things like that. That you're just inferring that the mass is there. So could it turn out that we just have completely misunderstood galactic rotation curves? I don't know.
Mm.
It,
Oh
it's
yeah,
super interesting.
I actually read an article. We on Twitch read that one article that one time. I
Oh,
remember
cool.
that discussion. Jimmy, just jumping in here. Do you have a favorite idea for where it might be, what it is, or
I No, I really
no?
don't know. It's
Mm.
hard. It's so difficult because uh, yeah, I just don't know. Like a lot of the good ideas have been examined, and
Mm.
I don't really. So for me, like science, I find science that is not um like experimentally verified. Like if you tell me this is the case and I can go out and make a measurement,
Mm-hmm.
great. But if you're just like, hey, theoretically it could be this, but we can't make this measurement for 1,000 years because we don't have sensitive enough
Mm.
detectors or whatever, I'm just kind of like, okay, like, it doesn't really. I think it's cool and it's interesting, but
Yeah, it's
it
cool
doesn't
and
really kind
interesting
of.
ideas in theoretical physics, but
Yeah,
what can we say more about it until we have some sort of notion, some sort of background, some sort of extra information about it. We love a
yeah,
mystery. That
exactly.
is true. That is true. Um, I have a personal question, I suppose, before we, well, not before, because we're already talking about all these things, but I want to ask it, risking for a biscuit that know end up disappearing before me asking this. Nerduino is such a fantastic and like a witty handle, absolutely fantastic. Do you do work with Arduinos, or do you build kind of what do you do anything like that with it?
Yeah, so so I'm terrible with like nicknames, like absolutely awful with handles or usernames or any of that stuff. And I I don't even remember how the Nerduino thing got started, but I was just like, it's kind of cool and geeky and nerdy uh and it just stuck, and people were like, oh, it's cool. But yeah, so when I was working at JPL, I was doing some work on with Arduino and also FPGAs, which is like basically a programmable logic board.
Okay.
that we were doing some building some correlate. It doesn't matter. We were building some instrumentation with,
Basically, a
and
handheld lab view, physical lab view
um,
thing.
it's more of a so it's just a programmable. It's a bit like an Arduino in the sense that
Okay,
it's
yeah, yeah.
programmable logic, but they're much more. Um, but they're a lot bigger. You can do more things with them, and they're a lot more fault tolerant and stuff like that. So for the
Okay.
applications that we were using them for, anyway, so then I was doing some Arduino stuff, mostly now Raspberry Pi stuff. Honestly, we do some on stream still. We've built an all
Oh,
sky camera, which I dropped the other day and is now
oh
not working.
no.
But but yeah, so that's kind of where the name came from, and it just kind of stuck. Yeah, I don't know, but it was like even after I came up with it, do you know, like when you have ideas and you think that you're like, it's not that great, but then people really kind of were like, oh, that's really cool. So I said, okay, and we stuck with it. Yeah.
Stuck with Oh no, it's fantastic. It's such a great handle and so witty. I think when I posted on Instagram that I was doing the show, someone even responded and was like, "Oh my god, that is such a witty and fantastic, fantastic use." You mentioned.
It,
Oh, sorry, go on.
so I was going to say, in all of my rambling earlier, I didn't actually answer your question.
Oh,
so,
where's?
uh, so when I left, so when I was doing my PhD research in the CMB, and we were working with some of the Planck people,
Hmm.
and JPL was the US data center for Planck, because the Planck was an ESA mission, it was a European Space Station mission, but there was a US data center because we
Hmm.
had supercomputers and stuff here. And so yeah, I got I w- I won a NRC fellowship after my PhD, or as I was finishing up, and that basically gave me funding for 2 years to be a postdoc wherever I could basically say to somebody, hey, I want to come and be a postdoc. By the way, it's all
I
paid
have
for. You
funding.
don't,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that's
you don't
so
have to pay me.
nice. And where did you choose to go?
So JPL, yeah. So I went to JPL,
Okay.
and then after 2 years, that funding ended, but then they kept me around, so I
Nice.
became an employee. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
good.
that
So
whole
that's
that postdoc gig, like, it breaks my heart every time. Like that instability,
yeah.
um, employment. And that's it. Like the pay isn't great either, but just like that instability is the thing that I'm always worried about. Basically, you get your funding and you're already stressed because you search for new funding pretty soon, and that runs out.
Right. Yeah.
Ah, it's so
And as a
stressful.
postdoc, you're very. I had a great thesis advisor, and the people I worked with at JPL were amazing. But as a postdoc and even as a grad student, you're very subject to the whims of your advisor, and it can be quite a difficult. I didn't experience this myself, but I saw
Yeah,
other people go through it.
yeah, absolutely. Some
So
people.
that can be a challenge.
No, I too got really lucky with my supervisor, but I also witnessed some of the worst to my friends. So, ah,
But
it's
I did just see Volcano. I don't know if you guys know Volcano Doc, but
yes,
so Volcano Doc just went straight from PhD to faculty.
yeah, she
That
did.
was that was great. Yeah, I
No,
was really
yeah,
pleased to see this.
yeah, I'm so delighted for her, and
Yeah,
hopefully it's all going well. We're keeping in touch sometimes. Occasionally she does stream early enough for me to catch her streams. Nerduino, you're streaming way too late.
I know. Sorry.
I'm already going to bed when your streams are starting. I say as I'm drinking wine while you're drinking coffee. Cheers, by the way.
Yeah. Cheers.
Our time difference is clearly very, very different.
Yeah, I do. So I did do a series for a while where I would get up at 4 and start streaming at 5 a.m. Pacific,
Oh my
um,
goodness.
and doing interviews, actually doing sit downs like this. So I would chat with people from Europe or wherever. So I might bring that back, but that was
That's commitment.
a lot, yeah. But it did. So when I started streaming, I was streaming in the mornings.
Hmm.
My daughter was in school, and I would stream while she was in school, and so that worked out quite well because it was like evening in Europe, but it was daytime here, and I kind of got everybody. Um, yeah, so that 5 a.m. thing was kind of a nod to all my European people who couldn't make the late night Pacific. So unfortunately, now my schedule is just it's difficult to. I can carve out one-off things like this, but it's difficult during the day. Yeah.
No, it's understandable. One of the things you described to me earlier was a lunar radio telescope concept called
Oh yeah,
DARE. What is that about?
yeah. So that was it was kind of cool actually. It was a project. So after Planck finished, so the Planck mission was actively cooled, and when eventually the coolant, when it ran out of coolant, the radiometers heated up, and uh, it couldn't make the measurements anymore, and so it kind of wound down, and the U.S. Planck effort was being wound down. So I had to find other work at JPL,
Mm.
and one of the projects I ended up working on, which was super cool, was DARE. Yeah, it was this Dark Ages radio explorer. So the concept was to catch a ride to the moon and then to the lunar far side, and put a lander, and put a radio telescope on the far side of the moon. So the problem with a lot of radio astronomy is, of course, interference.
Yeah.
But if you yeah, so if you stick it on the far side of the moon, you got the whole moon in the way of all well, most of the interference. And the idea was that we could do science from the far side, and it was super cool. It was like they were little mylar tubes, and it had like a compressed gas thing, and it when it landed, the gas went off, and it inflated these tubes, and that unrolled them, and that was what formed the antenna. It was just like a dipole,
Cool.
and it was a we got it got so it was a I think it was like $120 million mission. It was an Explorer class mission, and we actually got selected, but we didn't get funded. So um, they thought it was a good idea, but there were two other missions that actually got the funding. So I think they're still working on different aspects of it. There's still a lot of talk, of course, of like now they're talking about using craters to build radio telescopes. If
Mm.
you Because what we were trying to do it without people, because there weren't. This was again, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. So people on the moon to do things for you wasn't really an option. Whereas
Mm.
now it's like
Yeah.
we might have astronauts who could build
Yeah,
put an
everyone
antenna
seems
up
to
or
want
something.
to get to the moon these days. It's the trend by all nations trying to get there. So, is there any I don't know if will is the right way to say it, but is there any want on your part to go back and do work for all the hype
Huh.
that's been created at the moment?
Um, like, do I want to go to the moon, or do I want to go back to NASA and work
I
on?
suppose
Uh,
NASA to work. Well, the moon
oh
is
yeah.
a different question. That's a good question, and I can keep that for another one.
I would. Yeah, I would consider it. I really enjoy what I do now. I kind of enjoy being my own boss, and I really love outreach and education, and those aspects of this, which is why I'm here, which is why we're here, and that's why I'm on Twitch. So I don't know. It would be a tough. I mean, if they called me and said, "Hey, we need you to come do this," it would probably be hard to say no, I guess. But I do really enjoy what I do now. So yeah, it would be a difficult decision, I think.
Nerduino moon mission, let's go. Yes, and if you were got to be an astronaut, would you grab that opportunity?
Um, yeah, I would for sure. My eyesight's terrible, so I suspect I wouldn't get through the astronaut training. But yeah, I think it'd be cool to go to the moon. I'm not. The moon would be fun. I'm not like down for the Mars thing.
Oh
I
no.
got stuff. I got stuff to do. Like I need to. I need to
Laundry
come
is like
back.
next week. I really can't make it to Paris. Sorry, Elon Musk. Thanks for
uh,
asking.
but yeah, no, I wouldn't. I'm not down for the one way express. But yeah, like the moon would be super interesting to go to the moon. Yeah.
Mm, no, I've like my community in my chat do always ask me. It's like, oh, if you had the chance to go to the moon, if you had a chance to go to space, I don't think I'd ever take it. I'm such a scaredy cat. Like I get terrified of open space, and I know that it's the vacuum, and makes me uncomfortable just the idea of it.
But I mean, the new suits are pretty stylish. Like you know.
It's not the fashion that I have trouble with. uh. Oh, you were saying about the Mars. I'm sure you were keeping an eye out for the fast launches coming from SpaceX. Are you like interested, or do you have any general commentary about SpaceX's mission statement, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so SpaceX just put their 105th launch of the year successfully up this morning. So it's
Oh,
super secret. super secret spy satellites. So we don't really know what they launched,
Really?
but yeah, it's the National Reconnaissance Office, so they don't say what it is, but and they go off on odd. So from my house, I can actually see the launches from Vandenberg when they get high enough after about a
Oh,
minute and a half.
class.
And we've watched them on stream. We'll actually watch them at night. You can see the trail and stuff. So I'll put like a
Yes.
camera outside, and we do that so we see them. But yeah, they just did the 105th one. It was from California. I was outside with my daughter. We couldn't see it, but
Oh.
they do have different trajectories depending on what orbit they're trying to get to. But anyway, yeah. So they're obviously it's amazing. I mean, they're pushing the cadence. I mean, 105. So last year they did 98, and now they've just done 105, and it's we've still got a couple of months left. So I think it's great from a exploration perspective. There's some of there's a lot their safety record is not amazing
Oh
with their
no.
employees and stuff. They have quite a few um, accidents at their facilities and things with just from the push. But
I
yeah, I
hadn't
mean
heard about that. That's interesting.
oh yeah, there are we read an article on stream. It's probably 6 months ago that was talking about the safety record, and there's been a few like fairly nasty. I don't think I'm sure that anybody's died, but there's been a few people have
Severe,
lost
severe accidents.
yeah bad accidents. So anyway, but I mean overall, I think it's changed. I don't think it's really hard to sort of get a concept of how much it's changed because now we're just so used to it. Like, oh yeah, there's a launch pretty much every day. If you look at Rocket Launch Live, there's a launch. Either there was one yesterday or there'll be one tomorrow. It's like
Mm.
every 2 or 3 days, and that kind of thing is would we. I mean, 20 years ago, we wouldn't even have thought that, right? Now it's just
Mm.
like, I mean, SpaceX used to do like their launch broadcast would start 15 minutes before the launch, and it would go on, and they'd do the whole thing, and it would be like a 2-hour broadcast. Now you get like 30 seconds before the launch, they go live, they show the launch, they're done. It's like, yep, no big deal.
We did enjoy watching the heavy landing, which was absolutely
Mm,
phenomenal to see visually.
yeah,
Just like
absolutely.
such a feat of engineering and science, like absolutely incredible. To see that happen and obviously see it live all over the world. I thought that was incredible and um
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was amazing. I can't believe they stuck it first time, and
first try.
The chopsticks, I'm not really a big fan of the chopsticks kind of description. It seems to really undersell the amount of engineering that goes into
I
that
was
whole thing.
ranting. Do you know what, like the way it was accelerating down and then the heavy slowed down, like it almost froze mid-air before actually slowly landing. It stopped. It was hovering. Oh, I was ecstatic seeing
Yeah,
that.
it's crazy.
Oh, it was
That's
amazing.
crazy.
Those are really, really
Um,
cool projects, definitely.
yeah, and I guess the only other thing to say about SpaceX or indirectly is Starlink, of course, as well, and the pollution of the night skies with 6 or 8,000 Starlink satellites, which
Mm.
obviously as an amateur astronomer as well as a professional astronomer, I have mixed feelings about, I
Yeah,
guess.
at the moment it's something like over 50% already of all satellites in orbit are Starlink. Am I right in saying that? Or am I grossly
Yeah, I
incorrect?
think no, it's a lot. It's a lot,
Mm,
and they are only good for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and so
mm,
they're constantly replenishing the supply. And now China is starting with its big mega constellation. There's talk that India might have. It's I don't know. I don't know how much internet people need in remote places, but it seems like we have a lot.
yeah, 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 no, no, it is. And we talk about it quite often on our stream as well. We were talking about ideas of how to clean up all the space debris. I don't know if you were there. I was talking about pew pew lasers.
Oh yeah, I saw the start of that. Yeah.
So I was talking about lasers, explaining a little bit about the physics behind it, why it's ethically or morally not okay to do that. There's a whole debacle about that. But also, what statistic is the thing that I'm referring to? If a pair of satellites smash into each other, the debris could cause an exponential
Yeah. Yeah.
cascade. What name am I thinking of?
It's
You,
uh
you know what I'm talking
it's
about.
gonna I know what you're talking about. Yeah. the Kessler
Thank you,
Kessler
chat.
effect.
Appreciate it.
Um,
Do you,
yeah. So I mean, so Boeing actually just lost a satellite on Monday or something.
what?
It just broke up.
Boeing
Yeah,
is
it just
having a
broke up.
rough year.
I mean, you know, maybe Boeing's having a rough year. Maybe someone was doing something naughty. I
Oh,
don't know.
is it conspiracy theory time?
It'd be. I mean, satellites don't typically just fall apart in space. I mean, it's Boeing, so like we have to. But usually they don't just fall apart for no reason, right? There aren't that many. There's
So,
not like
did it fall out? Sorry, was it in space? It was in
yeah,
orbit
in
already, and it
orbit, in
collapsed,
orbit.
or what happened
Yeah,
to
and
it?
they're tracking. Well, it's not clear. It's not clear. They just said it broken up. That was kind of the description, and then they were tracking 28 large pieces of debris plus. I mean, goodness knows how much small stuff, presumably.
Yeah,
And it was in I think it was a geostationary orbit, but I don't
yeah.
remember.
Chat is
Someone to check.
confirming it. Yeah, it was. And we recently learned what geostationary was as well on stream. I'm so glad our education is catching
Ah,
up.
yes. Yeah, see? Thanks to space elevators.
Space elevators physics. I really like the space elevators. I learned a lot. I like those streams where I pick a topic that I know nothing about and the physics in it kind of sound, or supposedly, theoretically, in an ideal situation.
Yeah, for sure. The physics is actually pretty straightforward for that. It's
Material
the
science.
materials. Yeah, exactly.
Illinois, chop chop. We need materials.
Oh my god! Can you imagine a 36,000 kilometer long tether? I mean,
On the topic of sci-fi, is there
oh,
anything in sci-fi books or movies that is space or physics related that you're kind of watching out on the horizon? If that would be a correct way of saying, is there anything that is, oh, maybe we can see this in our lifetime?
oh, so Michio Kaku, I don't know if you know
I
Michio
know,
Kaku.
yes,
Yeah.
he's
So he has the book. I think it's called Physics of the Impossible or something.
yes, I have that book. It's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. And so he has a bunch of stuff in there where it's like, you know, like teleportation, for example. I mean, we have um, teleported at least the quantum states of matter across small distances. So will we see teleportation? I don't know.
Hmm.
I have always, so that's something I thought would be cool. And the other thing I always wanted even as a kid was like, you know, on Star Trek where they go and they get the food from the thing and they just say what they want and it just produces whatever meal would come out of it.
Mm.
I think that would be pretty cool.
That would be. It's I think it
But
was classed as a protein synthesizer, or was that in the early seasons of Star Trek? Not even early seasons, earlier storytelling. So but yeah, they put in the organic matter in.
the
But I could be
replicator,
mixing, yeah, it's a replicator, but I'm wondering if I'm mixing up Enterprise with like not later timeline series. I'm going on the rabbit hole of being too nerdy now. I'm going to stop here. It might be we're getting a bit too nerdy. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that you read Michio Kaku's book. Is there any other science communicators that you're a big fan of that would love to promote, other than
um,
yourself, of course?
myself. I mean, obviously, there's all the friends on Twitch who do all the cool stuff, like yourself and science streams and Danny paleontologizing. I mean, just some incredible people, and there's a bunch of people doing space stuff as well, like Astro Canuck and Mahoodles and EJSA and Rocket Guy. There's a ton, but in terms of like, I mean, Stephen Hawking has obviously got some good books. I like Feynman. If you want to get in a little more detail, like if you're a little more into the technical details, Feynman is some of the like Six Easy Pieces and all that.
Mm,
Um,
big fan of him.
and then yeah, he's good. And then A Brief History of Time obviously is sort of
Classic.
a classic. Yeah, I used to actually see Stephen Hawking when I was at Cambridge. My second year, I lived like in a house that was on his route to work. So I used to see him with his helper in his chair, not every day, but fairly regularly going to work. Yeah.
Imagine seeing. Wow, that should be on your CV. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know
Yeah.
you did like work and other important
Greatness
things.
by proximity, right? Exactly. Yeah,
I
it's the
think
nearest
I
I'm gonna
should.
get. And then we do have one other. So we have a redeem on chat as well for to read Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan.
Oh,
So I love Carl Sagan's stuff, but the Demon Haunted World is I mean, it was 1997, I think it came out, and that was relevant then, and it's still relevant now in terms of pseudoscience and,
I haven't read
you
it.
know,
I think the only thing I
yeah,
read from him is
it's basically about the struggle or the tension between pseudoscience and science, and why people find pseudoscience so much more appealing. Like,
oh,
why is there an astrology column in the newspaper every day, but there's no astronomy column in the newspaper every day? You know?
what's the name again? Sorry,
It's called Demon Haunted World.
Demon Hunted World.
Yeah, and it's
Oh
actually,
God.
like, it's available public. It's like, you can get the PDF online. It's
Okay.
public access, so you don't even it doesn't even cost anything. So actually, I should ask you, we have a redeem on the chat, which is to read it, but what we've done in the past is we've had people from chat read sections of the book,
Hmm.
and we're trying to do the whole book with not just my voice, right? Because we have a bunch of people from
Oh,
chat who've read different sections, so I might hit you up afterwards to read a few pages for us.
that is so cool. Absolutely. Oh, no, that is so cool. You called it demon, and I know a few people of my community, my lab rats, are like giggling in the corner because one time, a long time ago, I was studying what's his name's demon in a box. Um, oh Jesus, Maxwell's demon. Oh, there we go. Yeah, thank you, Bog. Yeah, Maxwell's demon. Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah.
you know that thought experiment.
No, actually.
I'm not going to go into it because I'm going to get upset again. It is not a real thought experiment. It is not real. There is no demon. I get very upset about it, and chat likes to tease me about it.
I
Anyways,
see.
going
Okay.
going into going into a little bit of a rabbit hole. I'm absolutely going to check out Demon Hunted World. I would love to check that out. That sounds like something really up my alley. Um, just to bring back a little bit, tiny bit, a topic I had in mind about your PhD research. So you were measuring the say it again properly, the cosmological something
Cosmic microwave
background,
background, yeah.
microwave background, there we go. Um Basically studying the origin of Big Bang. Would that be fair to
Uh-huh.
say?
It's
Um
the leftover radiation from the Big Bang, yeah.
Leftover radiation of the Big Bang. And what exactly were you doing with that study? I know you kind of mentioned it and we went on and raced ahead, and I just wanted to go back on it a little
Oh,
bit more in
sure.
details if possible.
So yeah, so like I was saying, so it's this relic radiation from the Big Bang, which is a 2.7 Kelvin background.
Hmm.
And somebody in chat will give us the other 17 digits, but it's this background that's left over that has been redshifted by
Redshifted.
cosmological redshift. The cosmological redshift. So, right, the universe has expanded since then, and now we see it as this 2.7K background, and it was discovered in, I think, 1965. It had been predicted, and Penzias and Wilson, these two scientists, had this feed horn that they were going to use for other things, but they kept finding this signal, and they were really irritated, and they like cleaned the pigeons out. It's a big physical horn, like a feed horn, and they cleaned the pigeons out. They did all these it made all these improvements, and they just couldn't get rid of the signal. And then eventually they realized, oh crap, we found the CMB, which when they got the Nobel Prize for that.
For thinking it was pigeon.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's amazing, isn't
Mm.
it? And so anyway, so there's this background, and then there have been many ground-based and satellite-based experiments. The first satellite was Kobe, that have tried to measure the so you can measure the background itself,
Hmm.
but then what you can measure are these little fluctuations, which are about a part in 10 to the 5, and those fluctuations can teach you about structure formation and how did galaxies and clusters and these
Hmm.
things form in the early universe. And so, but in order to do that, that signal is very small, and the polarization signal is even smaller. And when I left the field, polarization was starting to become more of a mainstream thing. But anyway, you need to remove all these foregrounds, right? So
Hmm.
you've got dust and synchrotron radiation and all these
Noise, I'm
all these.
guessing as well.
Yeah, well, the noise is the noise is just integration time, right? So you can average away the noise to some extent, but what we um, what we were trying to do was to derive cosmological parameters for, right. So we had different cosmological models, and we wanted to use the structure in the cosmic microwave background to help us differentiate which models were which one was right, or which parameters, what were the values of the parameters, and what was the range and the error bars and all that kind of stuff. Um, but you've only got one universe to observe, so the sort of the thinking behind the method that we came up with, it used Bayesian statistics and this method called Gibbs sampling to actually simulate a bunch of possible universes. So if you have these cosmological parameters,
Uh-huh.
um, you could simulate a bunch of universes, and then you could look at those universes and get rid of the foregrounds, and you could simulate
Mm,
all your foregrounds. And then you could take the ensemble average. This is maybe getting too technical, but anyway, you could take like an average of those universes and see if that looked like the universe
that
that
exists
you
now,
have.
basically.
Yeah,
Okay, so you
yeah.
were trial and error testing out under what conditions did the Big Bang happen based on this data that was measured. Is that a fair, awfully crude
No, I think so. I wouldn't say
statement?
that. The Big Bang, so we assumed the Big Bang happened, and we sort of assumed inflation happened.
Okay.
And then the question was, what were the values of the cosmological? There's like 8 different free
Ah,
parameters in the
okay.
model. And also, given the constraints that we have from other experiments on those parameters, what would the possible foreground contamination look like? So we
Okay.
could so we could simulate the galaxy. We could simulate the dust in the galaxy and do that, because we only have one dust map for our galaxy, which is n of one. But if you simulate a bunch of possible dust maps, then you can do some fancy statistics and uh, actually recover more data from
Mm.
your not more data than is there, but you can recover
Get more
more of the data
information.
back. Yeah,
Mm.
then you lose less from the foregrounds.
Yeah. That's honestly
So
like listening you talk about your PhD. Honestly, what was I doing with my PhD? Jesus,
oh
it wouldn't
no,
be
not at all.
anywhere as
Because I
exciting.
guarantee, I guarantee, if you told me what you did, I would be like, holy cow, that's
No, no.
no. Everyone's PhDs. Everyone has
It's
a
a niche. It's a little.
interesting. Yeah, but it's totally niche. Like there was like half a dozen or 4 or 5 of us working on that particular side of it.
So
So
cool. Um,
it's a
I'm
small field.
I'm just going to say to chat to please use the channel redeem. Get your questions in. To Nerduino, if anyone's coming in the middle of the stream, has a background in astronomy. I suppose astrophysics is fair to say as well. You have a background in astrophysics, worked in
Yeah.
NASA, loads
Yeah.
of cool stuff. So if you have any questions, please do. My personal question that I always like to kind of, as we're approaching the end, to ask is there? So I asked if there was any like nerdy sci-fi thing that you're looking forward to in the future. However, my question is there any book or movie that you thought the science was quite sound? As in, like, ooh, that movie did a good job in replicating science in this field, or
Yeah,
anything like
there is
that.
actually.
Oh,
So I just read it like a couple months ago. It was recommended to me by uh but so Breadman, if you guys know Breadman, he's a big Warzone streamer. Um and he kind of knows my background, and he was like, "Oh, I read this book, and the book is called Project Hail Mary." And it is sort of scientifically, I don't know if accurate is the right word to use, but
mm,
a scientific sci-fi book. It's really good.
okay.
I
Project
don't
Hail
want to. I don't
Mary.
want to. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah. So there's a crisis on Earth, and we have to launch a spacecraft out to try and save the Earth, and yeah,
Okay.
it's good. It's really good.
I've written it down. You've recommended two books for me: Demon Hunted World, although again the word demon trauma to me. Project Hail Mary. I will check those out. Thank you so much. Oh, we have a few questions coming in now.
It's
Uh,
Andy Weir, I think, I just looked it up. Yeah,
oh,
Andy
thank you.
Weir is the author. Yeah.
And Jimmy says he also heard great
Oh,
things.
there's a
Oh, he also wrote The
yeah.
Martian.
He did, yeah. He did, yeah.
Oh, okay. I know that one. That one I read. As a former NASA scientist, which question are you most often asked? Asks Big Gamey.
Oh, Big Gamey. Hey, Big Gamey. Let's see what question. So did we really land on the moon? I guess it's probably one of the most common.
I was drinking my wine when you said that. What? No way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that and then people just want to know if it's cool. Like, what's it like? What's it really like working there? And is it really cool? And that you get quite a lot of people. It's kind of odd because to me it's just like a thing that I did. Somewhere I
Mm.
worked. It was kind of a job, right? Like I
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
used to go to work, and it wasn't. I mean, I knew it was something that a lot of people would love to do, but it was just. But and then so you sort of get the reaction of people to it always surprises me. But it's really cool, and I'm happy to talk about it. But yeah, it always surprises me how excited people are to meet. They're like, "Oh my god, I know somebody that worked at NASA." It's like, okay.
Yeah, I know now someone who worked at NASA. Listen, this is my selling point here too. I'm going to use that. No, I'm so sad to hear about the moon thing. We do have a bit of a meme in our own stream. One of my moats, Tiny Tofu Sus, a long time ago, about a year ago or so, I didn't know Hollow Earth theory and lizard people theory. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
never heard about it, and I used my
Oh yeah.
whole science segment for 2 hours looking this up because I went down a rabbit hole. There was like 20 Wikipedia pages open, and yeah, it's
It's crazy. It's crazy. That and then the flat Earth people as well. We get the odd flat Earth person coming in, but it
Does it come
doesn't happen as
often?
much as no.
Oh, okay. I don't have flat Earth that much, but what I do have a lot coming in terms of it is I had what are those people who don't believe in modern physics? Basically, past Newton and Galileo, they don't accept particle relativity, anything from
Oh, are these the Newtonian
1900s.
dynamics people?
I think so. Yeah, I've had a good few of those on YouTube. Very was a shock to me. You know?
I mean, YouTube. Once you start making YouTube videos, it's like it's quite eye opening. Some of the comments and stuff.
Yeah, that was my first experience. Anyways, ranting to side. Not sure if this is relevant, but do wormholes exist? Get good is asking. So, do you know much about? Because you did mention black holes earlier, but do you know much about wormholes?
I mean, yeah, it's not. So no, I'm not an expert. There's no evidence that they exist. There are theoretical models that show they could, but it's kind of one of those things that we were talking about earlier, where it's like, it's a
Theory.
theoretical model. It's
Mm,
possible, but nobody has observed one, and no one has like an experimental design to test it either. So I mean, it'd be super cool. Like, I think it would be amazing if they turn out to be.
mm.
But as far as we know, yeah, approaching a black hole is not is probably not survivable. So
God damn it. And
sorry.
yeah, very, very, very sad statement there. Although personally, again, I don't want to be in space. I'm happy about that. What about the
Yeah.
flip side of the question? What's the worst scientific movie or book?
The worst one that I've watched all the way through. Oh gosh. Probably like we were talking about this the other day. We're probably like Armageddon or one of those.
I just recently watched Armageddon
Uh,
for the first time. I thought it was great.
it's great. It's a great movie. It's just the science is kind of painful. I mean,
Um,
I loved it. I watched, like I said, I watched it all the way through, and I've probably watched it more than once. But
oh, okay.
yeah,
I thought it was
yeah.
fantastic.
So
Great soundtrack, yeah, yeah. Um, Misadventures, Astro. Where is the secret moon base? I suppose
oh
to
well,
twist it factually, if there were a secret moon base, where would it be?
I think it would. Well, A, it would be a secret, obviously, but B, probably at the bottom of a crater somewhere. I always imagine it being a bit like the scene in Star Wars where the Millennium Falcon goes down into like the worm, the cave with the worm in the bottom. I always think that's where I would put my secret moon base down in a cave there somewhere. A lot less digging as well.
Do you have a favorite hypothesis for the end of the universe? So I did actually a segment on my Twitch stream. I taught my chat the three main theories. So just
Mm,
to quickly revise for anyone coming in, there's my favorite one because I understand it mathematically at least the best, which is thermodynamic, the big freeze one, where
uh-huh.
everything distributes evenly out eventually, to the point that there's going to be zero energy in all particles and matter. And number two is the Big Rip. And no, it's not what you think it is, but it's the one that a lot of the theoretical physicists are a big fan of, because the universe is expanding and accelerating so quickly that matter in space is going to actually start to rip apart. Space between atoms will. And then the other one is what's the word? The Big Bounce is the second part to it, but what's the first part? Remember?
This is the big crunch. This
Big
is like
Crunch.
the
Yes,
cyclic universe
yes.
stuff. Yeah.
That's the one. So the Big Crunch, where it's accelerating, it's going to slow down, and then it's going to snap back, and the Big Bang happens again. It's the Big Bounce. So those are the three theories that I know of. Is there a fourth one that you'd like to share, or is that one of the three that you're interested in talking about?
Yeah. So I think I agree with you. Actually, I think that it seems as though the the big crunch seems to be off the table
Yeah.
right now, based on our more. That was still very much when I started my PhD. That was still an option. It seems like it isn't, but who knows? So I think probably just an expansion until it's so weird, right? Because it's like, well, there's the energy is zero, but it's like, well, it can't be zero because we
Nothing.
have a
Yeah.
finite amount of energy. It's such a weird thing to think about, and that is one the people are always trying to like asking questions about and trying to understand this concept of infinity. Like, is the universe infinite? Is it, and what does that mean, and how should you understand that? And it's just so hard to, like, mathematically, yeah, it is, but what does that,
What does
what
it
does
really
that mean?
mean?
So, and I mean, it's hard. So yeah, but I think probably the most likely scenario that we see is this slow cold death. But I do kind of like the cyclic universe
I
thing,
like that
because
too.
just because it kind of has this appeal, right? Where it's like, well, with the Big Bang, where did the Big Bang come from? Why did we suddenly have this Big Bang? What? And then physicists are like, oh, well, there's no before. You can't ask. It's like, okay, but like that's not very satisfying. And so this kind of cyclic thing where you end up with this big crunch that kind of causes another Big Bang is somehow appealing, but
Yeah. I
probably
do,
not physical.
yeah, I do like the idea. But you're right about the Big Rip, that it was like oh sorry, it was the Big Crunch that's kind of disproven. Big Rip seems to be very heavily debated. I watch a lot of Neil deGrasse Tyson. There's a
Hmm.
lot of stuff. He seemed to be a big fan of it. A lot of controversy around, not controversy, obviously there's nothing controversial about the end of the universe. Why do we care what's going to happen? But that seems to be really popular with a lot of theoretical physicists, and I'm sure they know a lot more about it than I
Yeah,
do.
yeah, for sure. And me too. I mean, I'm not a theoretical
Yeah.
astrophysicist, but I do know. So my advisor actually is still very active in research.
Hmm.
He was younger than me. He was like 2 years younger than me when he was my advisor, which was kind of a weird thing. But yeah, he's moving. He was working at a university in Paris, and he's now moving to the US. He's taking a position here, so it'll be super cool to catch up with him. But I always run stuff by him. I'm like, hey, this doesn't make any sense to me, and he explains it, and I'm like, oh, okay.
That's so great that you have
Yeah.
such a good bond with you.
Yeah, he's great. He was actually he was the he was the officiant at our wedding when we got married. He came out here, and there's this
Ah,
program in California where you can be a state commissioner of marriages for a day, and he came out and got registered, and yeah, he
that's
did our wedding. That
fantastic.
was
Listen,
cool.
I'm gonna call Robert. He's gonna have a lot to do at my wedding now after this effort. um, okay, we've loads of questions. Fantastic. Wombat Hole asks, what type of data does NASA not archive? Can they keep all of it?
Yeah, so they do. So NASA actually has a like a duty to the public. It's a government agency, right?
Hmm.
So pretty much everything gets archived. I mean, it's not, the spreadsheet that some guy is working on, if you're doing like a back of the envelope type of thing. But any mission data that comes down is all archived. Um, Proposals and things like that all get archived. I don't know the level of detail of like how many revisions or whatever, or whether just the final one gets archived. But there's so they're really into keeping the data because you never know when it might come in handy. And there's tons and tons. There's so much data now that there's all kinds of projects that you could think of doing, even as like a citizen scientist. You could go back and you have access to all of NASA's archives,
Okay.
and ESA for that matter too. So if you came up with a project, you could in theory write yourself some code to download the data and do the analysis, and
Not bad.
uh, and so yeah, so the answer is all of the important stuff is backed up, and a lot of other things too. Yeah, for sure. And it's all publicly available, and they have a huge. So I was just on the panel at TwitchCon. I was on a panel with NASA, two people from NASA,
Yes.
and Mahoodles and Astro Canuck, and so they were talking about their mission to, to kind of do STEM education and outreach and all the different programs they have, and a bunch of cool citizen science projects that they have, and stuff like that.
No,
So.
that is fantastic. And obviously, like, I couldn't go to the States for the TwitchCon there. But how's your experience of being on a panel on TwitchCon? That must have been amazing.
It's good, yeah. It's all Science's fault, actually. He took because I'm in LA, so I'm just a couple of hours north of San Diego. And 3 years ago, I was just starting streaming, and Science was like, I'm going to TwitchCon. You should come. We should meet. Like, okay, I don't know. Yeah, okay. I'm not really a big crowds person. I'm not really like cons aren't really my thing. But I did. I went. I forced myself out of my comfort zone. I went. I got to meet Science, which was amazing, and Yogurt Garrel and a bunch of other people. We had an awesome time, and I was watching Science, like how he was growing his channel, and he was networking with people and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. And so last year we went to Vegas. It was in Vegas because they forgot to book the convention center in San Diego. And I was on a panel. So we had a science panel there with paleontologizing, Volcano Doc, Science Streams, and Mahoodles and myself. And we talked just about streaming science, trying to improve the not just. It's amazing when you go to TwitchCon, you talk to people, they're like, "What do you stream?" I'm like, "Oh, I stream science," and they're like, "Wow, there's science on Twitch."
Yeah.
It's like, God, yes, there is. And so we kind of just evangelizing all that. um, And then this year, Mahoodles organized the panel with the NASA folks. That in Vegas, they had their own panel. So NASA had a panel, and we had the science panel. This year, they combined them, and yeah, it was great. It was standing room only. They had to like close the room because it was at the limit of the fire limit or whatever for the number of people. And
Class
yeah, it was
packed to
it
the
was really
rim.
good.
Oh no,
It was
that's so
packed.
good.
Yeah, it was great, and we got a lot of positive feedback, and it went really well. So yeah, it's TwitchCon is really good fun. If you have an opportunity to go, or not just you, but if anyone has an opportunity to go, I would recommend going at least once because it's definitely interesting. It can get expensive. That's of course that's the problem, but it's definitely it's a hoot. Yeah, it's really good fun.
Next time, hopefully now that I'm in academia, my schedule is a bit jam packed. But if it's during the summer, I get the summers off, so hopefully.
Yeah. Well, and have you been to the one in Europe or no?
No, so it was.
Oh,
I haven't really been that. So I've been on Twitch for many years, but this whole science gig and all this has been about 1 year running.
uh,
This whole education thing that I do. About over a year, exactly almost a year running now. So when TwitchCon kind of happened, I was thinking about it, but again, I was in the middle of nowhere. I was looking for employment because I just finished my PhD, and I
yeah.
had to be around for interviews and stuff. So, anyways, my situation now is that I luckily have a job and that aspect, and of course I have my lab rats messing about there in the chat at the moment.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, no, your streams are great. I love it. I love watching it, and it's nice to catch it in the morning. In my mornings,
Oh
I'm
yeah, you
usually working
start
on
your
my.
morning with me.
I'm usually working on the video. I'm making my YouTube video, and I'm listening as I go. Yeah.
um, NASA versus CERN. Who is the best as spooky? If you had to choose.
Who's the best? I'm gonna have to say NASA, right? Because I mean, it would be
Fair.
it would be weird if I didn't. But CERN is pretty cool though too. But yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Any tips for handling the existential crisis caused by the contemplating caused by contemplating the heat death of the universe?
Um, I don't think I can say what. I mean, so I would say that my approach would be similar to the way that Tiny Toxic Tofu started this stream with a beverage, and I don't. Uh, that's but no, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, just don't think about it too much, I guess. Yeah, set aside a certain amount of time and then just switch off and go do something else. Because
Or,
otherwise, yeah, you could
or
drown
grab a
yourself.
towel, as Adam
Yeah,
Douglas would say.
exactly. Exactly.
Maybe a basic question, but do we know why the universe is expanding, or what's our best understanding of why? Whisper is asking. So, would you be okay to answer that? That's a heavy
Sure.
question.
Yeah, I mean, so basically the reason it's expanding as far as we understand it is from there's this Big Bang, right? There was the Big Bang, then we had this period of rapid inflation that that expanded the universe manyfold, exponentially. And then this sort of residual energy from that is what as far as we understand it, is what's been driving the expansion. And so what would slow the expansion down. So then the question is just, is there enough mass in the universe to eventually overcome the force of that expansion, right?
Mm,
Does the expansion win or does gravity win? That's kind of like a sort of the fundamental summary of what we're trying to figure out with. And then there's general relativity, there's all these like technical details, but basically, um, does the universe have enough energy in it, and then is there an expansive force like dark energy that seems to actually cause the opposite of gravity? So it's like a negative gravity, maybe.
mm,
We don't. So yeah, that's basically where we are. Then you get into some really interesting questions of like, well, how come we're right here to observe it right now? How do we seem to be right on this tipping point
perfect. Mm,
between closed and open and flat? And there's all these like coincidences, which is you never like coincidences when you're trying to do physics, So
mm. It opens doors
yeah.
for interesting discussions, put it lightly.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if that answers the question,
Mm.
but
No, Whisper says thank you. So I think at least
okay.
partially it does. In topology, our universe's dimension is basically infinite, but for physics, it's 3D. What are your ideas about it?
Um,
It's okay to say that you might have never thought about this.
I haven't. Yeah, I mean, so I typically think of the universe as 4D,
Mm,
although I'm not claiming to be able to think in 4D, but time, of course,
mm,
uh, is an important dimension. But no, I haven't thought about that in any detail.
mm. Okay. And there is a last question here. I'm guessing this is maybe a member of your community who's throwing a joke here that I don't
Uh,
know. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
African or European?
Oh, wait, I know this joke. How do I know this?
Monty Python, yeah.
Yes, I recently watched Monty Python as well, so I have no excuse. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm a huge Monty Python fan.
I only watched it a few months ago. I don't think it aged well as a new person coming into that realm. I don't think it's as great as people make it out to be, but that's a controversial statement in itself.
I mean, my wife hates it. She thinks it's stupid. So but I have trained up the next generation of Nerduinos. She thinks it's great. So
That's the most important part.
yeah, definitely.
Mm. But I had all my questions that I had prepared answered. Thank you so much, Nerduino. And I think we had all the questions from our community. Loads of questions from the really, really thank you. So Nerduino, have any, I know this sounds like deadly, but any final words? Or is there anything else you'd like to share or talk about?
No, I mean, thanks so much for having me on. It's been awesome. It's been great fun. Thanks to everyone in chat for being so interactive and asking so many questions. I would just say, so I do put out daily YouTube videos if
Mm-hmm.
people would check those out. It's
Really nice updated news stuff, you know.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's 60 seconds, so it's just a YouTube short. It's 60 seconds. And I post them on TikTok and Instagram. It's all the same thing. So wherever you like to consume your content.
Mm.
And then I'm live Tuesdays and Sundays at 8 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Like tonight, I'll be live at 6 p.m. So I go live earlier on Thursdays, 6 p.m.
6
Pacific.
p.m. for you would be 2 a.m. my time?
Yes,
Lovely.
I will not expect to see you there.
No, I have classes to teach tomorrow. I have to go get up early.
But it's all good. But yeah, no, just thanks for having me. And if people would come over and drop a follow, and yeah, we're just
Absolutely.
trying to grow the channel, and I'm super excited to talk to people, anyone about science, anytime.
Absolutely. So, in the title, if you guys know at Nerduino, if you hover over the name, it'll actually list all the social media immediately. So you can click immediately links that you're excited and happy to follow. I followed you on it. Sorry, I was a bit of a talker.
Oh, it's okay.
No, but thank you so much. It's so awesome to have you here. Hopefully I'll be scheduling more Tofu Tech Talks because they are fun. I get to learn. My community gets to learn, and it is just nice to kind of mix and like science and technology is a small corner of Twitch. It's important, but it's still a small corner. So it's nice to get to know everyone.
Absolutely, yeah. We got to get it. We got to grow it. That's the goal.
Right, I'm going to go into an AFK screen because I want to say my private goodbyes to Nerduino. But if you have any more questions, make sure to follow Nerduino on Twitch. Again, on social medias as well, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I'm sure if they ask questions there, you'll be more happy to answer them there. But
Absolutely.
on the other hand, mods, could you help me out to rate someone? Because I won't be able to say hello to all the people. And thank you so much for all the follows. And Nerduino's community clearly came over to support. You guys are more than welcome here. Yeah, I'll see you in a few minutes.